Hi everyone. It is currently Friday, September 27th, 2019, and you are tuning into the Five Starr Wrestling Report review series. This is the Friday edition to our show, where every week we cover MLW Fusion, NXT TV, and very soon, actually in 1 week for that matter, added to the review coverage will include AEW Dynamite. We are also 1 week away from a very pivotal turning point in wrestling in, what has it been? 19, almost 20 years. It is going to be very exciting. It is also going to be a lot of wrestling. And I don't know if people already feel that the market is oversaturated with product, but, based on the way things are going right now, a little more wrestling to keep track of. Just a little bit. Not a whole lot. Just like every day of the week except for Saturday and Sunday. With that all being said, if you are checking out the show for the first time and you would like to hear more FSWR content in the future, make sure you subscribe and click that little bell icon to stay notified. We have 2 uploads on this channel every week. Monday's edition is the weekly news coverage show where we go over all the major talking points in the wrestling market, and I will give my feedback or opinions on the matter. And Friday's edition is the review series, as I mentioned. MLW, NXT, and AEW are my current primary programs that I'll be talking about. Who knows, though? Maybe we'll add some other stuff into that mixture in the future. Impact, maybe New Japan, maybe Women of Wrestling, who knows? Anyway, do me a favor, if you would be so kind. Chime in with your thoughts regarding either or both of the shows from this week. I would love to hear your feedback. And I think that's all the preliminary plugs there. So let's get going on Fusion. They air a promo with Joseph Samael following the War Chamber match. He's still covered in blood from the match. Conveniently enough, he was also the only guy that gigged in that match, if I recollect. Basically pledges that Contra Unit is not finished with the Von Erichs, Tom Lawler, or Low-Ki. Jordan Oliver versus Zenshi. I know I probably feel like a broken record here, but if I were to give you the Cliff's Notes version of the recap, this was a match where 2 guys did a lot of impressive athletic stuff in front of a crowd that did not care about anything. I maintain that Zenshi is a tremendous talent that needs to be picked up by a major wrestling promotion within the next year. Him floundering in MLW is doing absolutely nothing for his career. Anyway, if you remove the cool moves aspect of this match, it was also a match with way too much interference from the heels, to the point where it felt like I was watching the Russo era of Impact Wrestling all over again. And after the ref is done dealing with one of the Injustice guys on the outside for like the 483rd time in this 10-minute match, the other Injustice dude, who I think is named Myron Reed, gives Zenshi a 450 splash, and then Oliver comes in to cover Zenshi for the pin. There was a lot of bullcrap going on in this match to keep track of. All I know is that Oliver won, the heels beat down the ref afterward, and then Gringo Loco ran out to run everyone off. So we now know that the feud is 3 indie dudes dressed in prison pants versus a real potential talent, a fat guy with a chair, and a referee. Very enticing program right there. And I think I already said this, but I will reiterate. Jordan Oliver either needs some facial hair or he needs to hit puberty relatively soon because he still looks and sounds no older than 14 years old. We get an update on Savio Vega's return. They also showed many replays and many different angles of Alex Hammerstone crippling Vega's right knee with the Nightmare Pendulum. Very unsettling to watch. We got a Mance Warner promo in the parking lot. conveniently surrounded by trucks. He reminds us that he was recently bailed out of prison. If memory serves me right, that's due in large part to Mance's uncle Buck Snort, who we are yet to see on this program, and I have been an advocate of debuting a Buck Snort character on MLW. And then he informs us that he wants Jimmy Havoc in a bunkhouse brawl / anything goes match. And then as Warner walks away, the cameraman decides to zoom in on the grills of the truck. I'm not sure what this cameraman's fascination was with this particular truck, but he really got all in there with the zooming. We had a quick promo package for the Dynasty Hart Foundation match later on. This was followed by a Richard Holiday promo. He initially informs us that it's currently 6 a.m., and he's about to show us some of his workouts at the gym. Then he talks about how everyone will soon know that there is only one true dynasty in MLW, and then he informs us that he is about to tan. So we went from 6 a.m. gym training to tanning, all within the span of this 30-second promo. That is quite the subject change. Also, I must note here that watching Holiday cut this promo, I could not help but notice the constant head bopping throughout. He needs to work on that. We had a War Chamber recap from last week. They showed all the notable highlights from the match, which really just consisted of them showing one or two moves, followed by a lot of guys either screaming or making mean guy noises. They were also sure to show the masked man, who was instantly punked out by Kevin Von Erich. Because if you will recall very quickly here, last week, in the middle of this War Games cage match, a cage, mind you, that was wrapped in barbed wire on the top to prevent interference from happening, a mystery masked fella appeared on the outside and attempted to climb up the cage. And not only was this man thwarted by a 60-plus-year-old man, but we never found out who the masked guy was. They just shot a random angle with a masked dude that paid off moments later with the masked dude getting laid out on the outside. What a payoff. Anyway, they aired a Von Erich promo, and, well, suffice it to say, if you've seen one Von Erich promo in MLW, you have pretty much seen them all. A lot of mumbling, a lot of one-dimensional facial expressions, and a lot of monotone talking. Selena De La Renta and Jimmy Havoc had a promo. Selena said that LA Park is going to take care of a supposed problem that she needs to deal with. And then Jimmy Havoc came in and warned Mance that he's going to, and I quote here, drink his blood. That is, it's not sanitary. I was also completely incapable of taking the promo seriously, especially when Havoc's wearing a button-down shirt with a bunch of music notes on it. You want to make the guy look more intimidating? Maybe try a shirt with skulls next time, as opposed to music notes. Just small recommendation. And in our main event, the Dynasty versus the Hart Foundation 2 out of 3 falls match for the MLW Tag Team Championships. There's a great moment during the intros to this match with Tony Schiavone and Rich Pacino on commentary. Tony says, and this is almost a direct quote here, "I have 5 children. I have never advocated for a parent to hit their child, but I would love to smack that SOB MJF in the mouth." I laughed uproariously at this. We had MJF and Holiday stalling with rock, paper, scissors tactics. The best part of this being Holiday forgetting when to draw the hand and MJF having to remind him of how the game works. I also took note of the fantastic spot on the outside where Holiday is telling the people outside to relax, and Holiday goes over to a fat guy in a green shirt and tells him to relax, And the guy just goes, "I'm good, brother." Again, I laughed. So the babyfaces took control early on. We had the announcers arguing for the first 5 minutes over whether or not the match was official because there was no initial bell, because nobody in MLW knows how to do their job or what's going on like 95% of the time. There's a point where MJF and Holiday up and leave. This somehow does not lead to the ref counting them out. Instead, Hart and Smith go to bring them back, and in absolutely cartoonish fashion, you just see MJF take a flip bump on the entryway with Smith following behind. So eventually the heels are able to cut the faces off of the heat. Smith got an early hot tag and ran wild on MJF and Holiday. He hit a spiked pile driver on Holiday for not a pinfall. And all of this builds up to the first fall, in which Holiday and Smith do a reverse Irish whip. Both men collide heads against each other, and with Holiday staggering in the ropes, MJF pushes Holiday. He falls onto Smith, and that is how the heels win the first fall. It was a good idea in theory, looked really awkward in execution. We have a 30-second rest period in a match that is already going on like 10 minutes too long. They randomly plug the Warner Havoc Bunkhouse Brawl for next week. And they come back, and Teddy Hart eventually gets a hot tag. He takes out MJF with a Canadian Destroyer, followed by a lumbar check to Holiday. They do this really scary-looking spot where MJF tries to crotch Hart on the top rope, but Hart kind of just crashes down on the mat on his ankle. Looked awful. And in the most notable spot of the entire match, Hart gives MJF a Canadian Destroyer off the top rope, followed by a Lion Salt for the 3 count. All of this equating to the second of the 3 pinfalls in this match. Keyword, not the finish to the actual match. Although it probably should have been, considering what the actual finish was. I should also note here that this was not the only show that I saw this week where a Canadian Destroyer off of the top rope was not the finish. We also saw this in a Keith Lee Dominik Dijakovic match on NXT. I have no idea when the Canadian Destroyer just became a standard move that guys kick out of, but I seem to recall Impact having Petey Williams do this move like years ago, and it was always awesome because it was always a move that led to a finish. Somehow the Canadian Destroyer has just become a transitional move in the business. Very sad. Anyway, they immediately kill the crowd with a 30-second rest period. They also randomly plug a match involving, no joke here, Timothy Thatcher versus Douglas James. I will say that I am at least familiar with Timothy Thatcher. I have no idea who Douglas James is, although you really can't get more generic of a name than Douglas James. So they come back for the third fall. Hart goes for the hammerlock DDT on MJF, but Holiday breaks it up. Smith takes out Holiday, and while the ref is dealing with that, Austin Aries runs in. He clocks Teddy with one of the belts, gives him a brainbuster on the apron, wherein Teddy's legs actually caught the top of the rope, and it looked like the dude got killed. It is at this point where the ref decides to administer the count. Why he did not do this during the first part of the match, where the heels just tried to run away, I have no idea. Wrestling logic. Anyway, Hart is dead on the outside. MJF eventually makes it to his feet, and after Hart does not get back in the ring by 20, the ref calls for the bell and the heels retain. And then after the match, they do the injury angle with Hart on the outside, which consisted of trainers coming out and just helping Smith carry Hart to the back. I guess because MLW cannot afford stretchers in the year 2019. And that is how the show went off air. I will add here, too, that I did appreciate the fact that MJF was still selling the top rope Canadian Destroyer like 7 or 8 minutes after the fact. It's the small details like that which make guys like MJF really stand out as talents in this business. And it protects Hart's finishing move. So, thumbs up there. I did like the match overall. Probably took them about 5 minutes longer than it should have to get to that first fall, but once they got going with the match, it really picked up in pace. They did a good job setting up the program with Aries and Hart. The Dynasty continued to be one of the most redeeming aspects that keep me watching the show every week, and I still maintain that when this group does eventually break up in the coming weeks, it's going to absolutely suck for this company. Overall, I thought the show was fine. Main event was a lot of fun, especially the last 10 minutes. Mance Warner had a great promo. It's always fun to hear him talk. And Zenshi is a great talent that, as I mentioned earlier, either needs to be signed to AEW or WWE in the year 2020, because holy cow, does that guy have star potential. Okay. NXT, September 25th, 2019. The show begins with all the members of the Undisputed Era posing with the gold on the stage. Actually, it was more like a balcony behind the announcer's table. Keith Lee versus Dominik Dijakovic. I cannot say that this is my favorite feud of the year, but damn would I be lying if I told you that this is not my favorite series of the year. I don't know what it is about Keith Lee Dominik Dijakovic matches, but there's just some kind of natural, organic chemistry that these guys have, where every time they have a match, it's awesome. That all being said, was it as good as their matches from, say, PWG? Probably not. This match was more about telling a story, whereas a lot of their previous matches were just showcase pieces of, let's do 1,500 high spots because the people will love it. There was still a lot of great stuff they did in this match. I did love the top rope Canadian Destroyer from Dai Jack to Lee, even though it did not lead to the finish, which it probably should have. I love the corner spot where Dai Jack tried to ram Lee's head into the turnbuckle, but Lee no-sold it and drove Dai Jack's head into the buckle. They also had one of the best finishing sequences I've ever seen before. So Dai Jack goes up and hits a moonsault on Lee. And Lee not only powers out, but he sits up while holding Dai Jack in his arms. He rolls through, lifts up Dai Jack onto his shoulders, and he hits the Limit Breaker F5 for the 3. It was such an awesome finish, particularly when they zoom in on the facials of both guys, and you see that Dai Jack's practically crapping himself in fear. Meanwhile, Lee just gives him a mean guy look and hits his finisher. Incredible. The only thing, I repeat this, the only thing that I could negatively critique about this match was the constant flubbing the announcers had with pronouncing the name Dijakovic. And I will continue to reiterate this because I feel it's an appropriate criticism. Can you just call the guy Dominik Dijak? Why does he have to have the typical NXT name where it's way too hard to pronounce and way too elaborate? Just call him Dominik Dijak. It's not that hard. Other than that, I love this match, and I want to see it 1,000 more times. Dakota Kai versus Tainara. So, Dakota Kai has been out with an ACL injury for almost 9 months, and in her first match back on TV, she has to wrestle Tainara. Poor Dakota. They had a relatively short and painless match. The people were happy to see Dakota back. I've always been a big fan of her, especially watching her work on the indies, so I was glad to see her back too. You could definitely tell that she has star potential. Crowd really likes her, so at least she's got that going in her favor. They did some stuff for a few minutes, and Dakota won with, and this is a direct quote from Morrow here, a go-to kick, which is literally a GTS, but modified with a kick to the face as opposed to just dropping the opponent on the knee. It's an innovative move, but horrible name. Other than that, segment was fine. And in the hour main event, Matt Riddle versus Killian Dain in a street fight. Yes, the no contest finish in the Matt Riddle-Killian Dain street fight from last week has led to a rematch of Matt Riddle versus Killian Dain in a street fight. Okay. And in this street fight rematch, where anything goes and weapons are legal, they proceed to have a standard singles match for like 5 minutes. They did at least have a fun back-and-forth exchange during their regular match, but I did wonder why they did not just immediately go to the crowd brawling whenever the bell rang. They did eventually introduce some chairs and kendo sticks. They did the great spot where Dane gave Riddle a cross-body check through one of the gimmicked walls. Of course, they immediately killed the moment by going to commercial literally within seconds after they did this spot. Very infuriating. There is a fortuitous and simultaneously great moment where Riddle goes to beat Dane with a kendo stick, and the stick actually bounces back up and lands between the ropes and Riddle's shoulders, to which the crowd immediately pops, and Riddle, as a great improviser would do when something inadvertently presents itself to you, he grabs the stick and gives Dane another shot with the stick. Awesome spot. They did the deal where Dane gave Riddle a series of Vader bombs in the corner, playing off their story of how their last match ended. Of course, everyone expected Riddle to kick out, so there wasn't a whole lot of suspense there. Riddle hit an amazing-looking Alabama slam at one point. He is very freakishly strong, as I wrote down here. And they did a few more things, and then eventually Riddle won with a Fujiwara armbar submission. Now, I will say this. I don't want to harp on this for too long, but Morrow said something during the Riddle-Dane crowd brawling that actually brought up a very good point that I never thought of. He says, Killian Dain returned to NXT to make Riddle's life a living hell. So my question is this. Why are Matt Riddle and Killian Dain feuding? Why did Killian Dain target Matt Riddle? Because for as long as this program has been going on, what with Dane attacking Riddle on more than one occasion, did they ever establish a reason as to why Dane targeted Riddle to begin with? Because if they didn't, then literally the whole story of this feud from the beginning has been Killian Dain attacked Matt Riddle, and now they are feuding. And I guess it's not a huge deal. I mean, if it was, I would have been thinking of this question when the feud first started, but I do think it's a valid question. And I don't know if we ever got an explanation for it. I don't know why. With that all said, they blew off the Dane Riddle feud, as it would seem. Afterwards, Adam Cole came out to confront Riddle. Riddle put him in the Fujiwara. Cole immediately taps, and then the rest of the Undisputed Era ran out to chase Riddle off. So there's your big program for next week. Adam Cole versus Matt Riddle for the NXT title, presumably head-to-head with the six-man main event that AEW is doing. Should be a lot of fun. I don't expect a title change, but man, who really knows? I mean, if WWE is really looking to challenge AEW, they could do a hotshot title change just to garner some additional viewers. I don't think it would be good business to do that, and I don't really want to relive the Russo era of the Attitude Era, where we literally saw title changes like every week, be it on WWF or WCW programming, but I guess we shall see. So that was hour one. And in hour two, Rhea Ripley versus Kaden Carter. So, I'm sorry. I'm trying to rationalize this in my head. So a few weeks ago, Rhea Ripley showed up on NXT to a thunderous ovation and proceeded to challenge Shayna Baszler to a match. They have a match. It ends in a DQ finish with Rhea standing tall as the babyface. They then proceed to do a number one contenders match for the women's title, which is won by Candice LeRae, and Rhea is left out of the equation entirely. And here, she is working as the heel against an enhancement talent who is making a babyface comeback on her and getting visual pinfalls. Something seems very off about this story development. Anyway, the match did tell a good story. Rhea beat on Kayden forever. Kayden made a short comeback. She got a couple hope spots on Rhea, and then Rhea won with a move. Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch versus Chase Parker and Matt Martell, who now refer to themselves as Ever Rise. At least their theme music is pretty cool. And they've also got matching gear going in their favor, so they're doing a couple things right. But aside from that, they are two very generic-looking dudes with not a whole lot of personality. I will credit the announcers at least. They tried to put over Parker and Martell and give them a bit of a backstory, but absolutely no one in this building, from the announcers to the fans, no one expected Ever Rise to win this match. I took almost no notes about the action. A lot of it consisted of dudes laying on the mat. The heels did a lot of ground holds. And in the finishing sequence to this match, and no, I am not making this up, Danny Burch gets a hot tag, and he raises his hands up, and he screams. This is followed by Oney Lorcan rising up on the outside, and he too raises his hands in the air and screams. They hit a combo DDT on one of the Everrise dudes, and then they pin him. And this is met with a response from Morrow on commentary, who, as charismatic and outgoing in personality as he is, simply goes, "The hell was that?" I laughed. Cameron Grimes versus Raul Mendoza. If there is a book written one day about generic NXT squash matches, this match would be on the cover of that book. There is an absolutely mind-boggling spot here where Mendoza actually does a springboard leap off of the ropes into a, no joke here, a headlock. It was so impressive, but when he finally got Grimes grounded, I was like, wait a minute. He did a springboard leap off of the ropes just to put Grimes in a headlock on the mat. I have never been so simultaneously excited and infuriated in my life. They did a lot of lying around. Grimes applied a lot of riveting and captivating looking arm wrenches and chin locks. They picked up a little bit of action toward the end. Mendoza made a big fiery comeback, and then Grimes just hit a double foot stomp out of nowhere and won. I've got nothing. And listen, I don't want to constantly feel like I'm nagging on Cameron Grimes. Obviously, they see something in this guy. He's been on TV every week, pretty much. They're putting him over. They're protecting his finisher. They're trying to get the guy over. It's not working. And I don't really know whether that has to do with his personality, his wrestling ability, his look. I really don't know what the problem is. All I know from watching Trevor Lee's work for years is that he's a pretty athletic guy that can do some stuff, but he's got a standard cashier associate at Walmart physique. He's whiter than printer paper. He's got scraggy long hair, and he honestly just looks like hell. No tan, no body definition, no facial definition. He's just a guy right now. And honestly, if you have seen Trevor Lee matches in WWE, he looks no different than he did when he wrestled for Impact or PWG or any indie circuit. Literally, nothing has changed about this guy for years. He looks exactly the same. There's absolutely No innovation whatsoever with him. Maybe they'll eventually tell him he's got to change his look up a little bit. I would start with a haircut and shaving the gorilla chest he's got going on. Afterwards, I would recommend a tan and maybe some other ring gear that doesn't look like he went shopping at the discount rack at Target. But other than that, all I know is that they are pushing him and he's not getting over. So something's got to change if they want to make this guy a star. Kushida and Breezango versus Imperium in the main event. Well, I will at least say that I was shocked by Kushida's choice in tag partners. I guess in the context of a match against Imperium, whose gimmick is that they don't like wrestlers that joke around and treat the mat like trash. Guess it makes all the sense in the world that they would find themselves in a match with the Fashion Files at some point. Match was a lot of fun. It was sort of your typical WWE tag match in 2019. Kushida and Fandango got to run wild early on. Tyler Breeze got a tag and the heels triple teamed him for a while. They, of course, had to do the teased hot tag spot where Breeze tries to crawl over and get a tag, but the heels either yank the partners off the apron or they intercept Breeze midway through to continue working him over. Eventually, Fandango gets a hot tag. He does a dive to take out Imperium on the outside. Kushida gets in and does a couple things for a minute and eventually gets a roll-up pin to put the baby faces over here. And then afterwards, he tries to celebrate at the top of the ramp, but Walter comes out, gives him a boot to the face, and the Imperium dudes pose at the top of the ramp. It was a fun segment, a good way to close out the program. I don't really have anything to complain about. And that was NXT for the week. Now, I'll talk about this a little more on Monday, but I do want to briefly mention this. The ratings for this show were significantly down from last week. And while I wouldn't put too much stock in it being a bad thing, I think a lot of the show is designed to build up for next week. So I do expect a much stronger rating for the October 2nd show. With that all being said, they need a reformatting when they air both hours on USA. The constant squash matches are not working. They're killing the crowd. And they're also killing a lot of initial buzz from the first hour. I mean, think about what they're doing right now. When you put on an action-packed first hour of a wrestling program, and you follow it up with hour 2 Headlock City, you'd have to expect that people are going to get fed up with that relatively quickly. I don't know what their plan is right now. I'd have to think they'll be a little less conservative with the squash match deal, especially when they're going head-to-head with AEW. But I'm really hoping they just can that squash thing entirely. They got it right in week 1 during the Cameron Grimes match where he won in like 10 seconds with a foot stomp. But if we start seeing more matches like the Lorcan Birch versus Everrise and the Grimes versus Mendoza match from this week in the subsequent programming, could be a little less forgiving in my recaps because I don't want to see these kinds of enhancement matches, especially the ones that go on for like 10 minutes. I mean, especially if you're going to telegraph the finish and we already know who's going over. Why do these matches need to be 50-50 between the opponents and go on for like 15 minutes? Just have a guy beat up an enhancement guy in 2 minutes and win. It's not that hard. The guy that you are trying to establish does not need to be selling for a jobber. Man. All right, everyone. On that note, I'm out of here for the weekend. Got a hectic couple of days ahead of me with work, one of which involves me unloading a truck at 2:30 in the morning. Never done it before, but I know I need to be on my game for it, so I'm going to try to edit this and upload as quickly as possible so that I can take a power nap before I have to head to the building. Thanks for watching. Again, subscribe and rate if you have not done so already. Keep posted on Monday and Friday uploads on this channel every week, and I will see you all next week.